He stole billions, stole from hospitals, stole from pension funds, stole from people. So- And right now, as you're listening to this, he is probably laughing. That image is unbearable for most people, not because of the yacht, but because of what yacht implies. It implies that none of it matters, that the universe doesn't care, that goodness is a sucker's game, and evil is just a more efficient strategy. And here's the thing, you can't dismiss that feeling because it's not irrational paranoia, it's pattern recognition. You have watched it happen. The most ruthless guy at school got the girl, the job, the connection. The most manipulative person in your workplace got promoted. The most corrupt politician in your country died in a mansion, surrounded by family, celebrated at his funeral. So when someone tells you karma is real, your first instinct is to laugh. And I don't blame you because the version of karma most people have been sold is laughably broken. But here is what I want to spend the next 40 minutes doing. I want to dismantle that broken version completely. And then I want to build something in its place that actually holds up. Not a spiritual consolation prize, not a be patient, God will get them eventually. A real, structural, almost mechanical explanation for why evil is never the advantage it looks like, and why the good person who is struggling right now is not losing. They just can't see the full board. Neither can the man on the yacht, but karma can. Let's start with the version most people believe, because you need to understand exactly why it fails before you can understand what's actually true. Most people think karma works like a vending machine. You do something bad, a coin drops, something bad happens to you. Direct, immediate, proportional. This is the exoteric understanding of karma, the surface level one, the one you hear in casual conversation. They say, oh, he'll get his karma. What goes around comes around. God will punish him. And when nothing happens, when the man on the yacht keeps sailing, people do one of two things. They either conclude karma does not exist, or they expand the timeline. They say, maybe not in this life, but in the next. Both responses are actually the same mistake. They're both assuming karma is a punishment system. They're both picturing some cosmic judge watching your behavior, keeping a tally, and eventually, when the moment is right, sending a lightning bolt from the sky. And I'll tell you this directly, that version of karma is not just naive, it's dangerous because it makes goodness passive. It tells you, don't worry about fighting back. Don't worry about changing the system. Don't worry about holding power accountable. Just be good, keep your head down, and wait for God to handle it. That is not karma. That is learned helplessness dressed in spiritual clothing. Now, I want to pause here because I'm going to say something that some people will disagree with. And I want you to sit with the disagreement rather than dismiss it. There is a strand of serious theological thought, Christian theology specifically, that says karma, in the traditional sense, is a lie, not just a wrong, a lie. The argument goes like the most psychopathic, inhumane leader who ever lived will likely die in comfort, surrounded by wealth, without remorse, because a true psychopath does not carry the weight of conscience. They don't suffer the way you imagine they suffer. And therefore, the argument continues. Our real reckoning comes only from God, either eternal coronation or perpetual damnation. Until then, what happens in this world is ephemeral as smoke in the wind. Do not disturb your heart. The world is temporary, justice is eternal, and eternal justice is God's business, not yours. Now, that's a coherent position. I respect it. But here's where it breaks. It assumes that karma is only about punishment, only about settling scores. And that's not what karma is. Karma is not primarily about punishment. Karma is about casualty. And casualty doesn't care about your theology. Let me show you what I mean. Forget the supernatural for a moment. Forget past lives. Forget divine judgment. Forget celestial scorecards. Just look at how the world actually works. What does evil structurally require to function? It requires extraction. It takes more than it gives. It exploits people, systems, trust. That's not a moral judgment. That's a mechanical discipline. And here's what extraction always does. It destroys the source. The emperor who taxes his peasants into poverty doesn't just create suffering. He destroys his own tax base. He eats the seed corn. And now there's nothing left to harvest next winter. He has maximized short term gain and guaranteed long term collapse. The business person who exploits workers and cuts corners on quality doesn't just create injustice, they create structural fragility. The product fails, the workers leave, the reputation crumbles. The competitors who played it straight, who actually invested in quality, who treated people like they mattered, they are still standing when the exploiter is not. The politician who builds power through manipulation, through buying loyalties, through fear, doesn't just become corrupt. They become dependent on the very people they have corrupted. They cannot trust anyone because everyone around them is there for the same reason they got there: self interest. You cannot build a stable structure on a foundation of mutual exploitation. This is karma, not lightning bolts, not divine retribution, just the ordinary, mundane, completely predictable logic of how systems respond to what you put into them. Goodness is productive, it generates trust, collaboration, loyalty, innovation, creativity. These compound, these scale, these create environments where more goodness becomes possible. Evil is extractive. It consumes what it did not create. It borrows from the future. It's structurally parasitic. And here's the key insight: evil can gain in the short term by leeching off goodness, but it never, not once in history, has it been sustainable. Every empire built on domination required increasing violence to maintain itself. Every cartel built on fear required more fear to maintain control. Every fraudulent business required more fraud to cover the previous fraud. Parasites need hosts, and eventually the host dies, or the host adapts, and then the parasite has nothing. Now, I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, okay, but I've watched real people, real evil people, and they did not collapse. They just kept winning. Hold that thought, because there are two places where this argument gets more precise. The first is what evil does internally. The second is what the Hindu tradition has known for thousands of years about time. You cannot selectively numb. This is one of the most important sentences I will say today. The neural pathways that allow you to hurt someone without flinching are the same pathways that process joy. You don't get to turn off empathy and keep everything else. The person who trains themselves to be cruel without guilt has also trained themselves to be incapable of genuine connection. They can perform it, they can mimic it, but they can't feel it. Watch any powerful person who built their position through manipulation. Watch them in a quiet room. They cannot sit in a quiet room. That's not a metaphor. That's not spiritual language. That is a neurological consequence of the choices they made. Every act of cruelty requires the soul, and if you don't like the word soul, use self, use psyche, use the integrated personality. It requires the self to disconnect further from its own essential nature, which is connection, which is rest, which is genuine presence. Every lie you tell demands build thicker walls between who you pretend to be and who you actually are. And those walls don't just block the world out, they block you in. The billionaire who built his empire through exploitation, study him carefully. Not his press releases, not his curated interviews. Watch his eyes. He does not trust anyone because he knows exactly what people are capable of, because he is exactly what people are capable of. He spends enormous energy maintaining facades that have become prisons. He has everything, and he is surrounded by nothing. Not nothing in terms of possessions or people, but nothing in terms of real connection, because real connection requires vulnerability, and vulnerability requires trust, and trust requires that somewhere in some relationship you are not extracting, you are genuinely giving, genuinely present. He cannot do that. He doesn't know how anymore. That is not punishment from outside. That is the automatic, mechanical, psychological consequence of the choices made. External success, internal poverty. And here's the compound problem: every act of harm adds that internal poverty. The ledger doesn't reset, it accumulates. The person who looked like they were winning at 40, that internal fragmentation is now compounding quietly. The paranoia, the isolation, the inability to enjoy what they have. These are growing, not shrinking. This is the delayed karma operating within a single lifetime. Not dramatic, not a lightning bolt, just the slow compounding weight of a self that is increasingly at war with itself. But there's a third layer, and this one is older than any of us. In the Treta Yuga, there was Ravan, great greatest scholar of his age, ruler of Lanka, unmatched in power, intelligence, in will, and he enjoyed all of it for a very long time. He lived well, he absolutely, he accumulated everything until Ram came. In the Dwapar Yuga, there was Shishupal, cousin of Krishna, king of the Chedis. He had committed 100 crimes, and he knew it, and Krishna knew it. And there was a promise made that 100 transgressions would be forgiven. 100. He enjoyed himself through 99 of them. On the 100th, Krishna's Sudarshan Chakra, not a moment earlier. This is what the Hindu tradition understands that Western thinking often misses. Evil people enjoy until their time comes, not until God decides to strike them out of anger, not randomly, not arbitrarily, but until the punya, the accumulated spiritual credit, the karmic fuel runs out. Because here's what this tradition is saying in practical terms: the person who is doing evil and living well is spending. They are drawing down on an account. The account might be enormous. It might take an entire lifetime to it might look like they have infinite fuel, but the account is finite. And with every act of harm, the account depletes faster. And with every act of harm, they're also building a new debt, a debt they will carry forward. The moment the credit is exhausted, not just themselves, but those who enabled them, those who benefited from their power, their entire ecosystem begins to collapse. Sometimes in this life, sometimes beyond it. And here's the thing about this view that I find most precise: it does not require supernatural intervention. The punya depletes because evil is unsustainable. The ecosystem built on extraction collapses because extraction always collapses. The man surrounded by transactional loyalties finds himself alone because transactional loyalties are not loyalty at all. The ancient framework and the modern structural analysis are pointing at the same thing. Evil has a timer. You just can't see the clock. And that invisibility, that's the trap. That's why it looks like evil people are winning, because you're watching the spending, not the depletion. You're watching the feast, not the famine it's creating. We've spent all this time on the evil person. Let's flip it, because the real weight of this question, why do evil people thrive, is not actually about the evil person. It's about you. It's about the good person watching it happen, the honest person passed over for promotion, the ethical business person losing to a competitor who cheats, the principled person watching someone corrupt rise to power. And here's what I want to say, something that might be the most important thing I say today. The good person is not losing. The good person struggling is not losing. They are building. But there is a distinction I have to make, because there is a version of goodness that is actually passivity, that is actually fear, that is actually low energy dressed in ethical clothing. And the universe does not reward passivity. Energy comes first. Think about it this way: God or the universe, or karma, or casualty. Pick your frame. will always reward a high energy, unethical person before rewarding a low energy, ethical one. That is a brutal sentence, but it's true because high energy produces results. It moves things, it changes circumstances. Even misdirected energy creates feedback loops that eventually correct. Even the high energy, unethical person eventually runs into the structural walls we talked about. But low energy ethics produces nothing, it just waits. It virtue signals to the void. It says, I'm the good one, while the world moves around it. High energy ethics. That combination is rare precisely because it is so demanding. It requires you to move with full force and to move with integrity, to compete fiercely and to refuse to cheat, to pursue power and to remain trustworthy with it. That combination is rare, and the universe compounds it when it finds it, because that is the only combination that builds something that lasts, not just for you, for everyone around you, for the systems you're part of, for what comes after you. The struggling ethical person needs to ask, am I struggling because I'm ethical, or am I struggling because I'm low energy? And I'm using ethics as an excuse not to push harder. That's an uncomfortable question, but it's the right one. Let me give you the clearest version of this I can. Karma is not a punishment system. It's not a vending machine. It's not a cosmic judge. It's not divine retribution delivered on a schedule. Karma is the native response of the world to what you put into it. Goodness produces, evil consumes, production compounds, consumption depletes. On a human timescale, weeks, years, a single lifetime, evil can look like a winning strategy because consumption is fast and gratifying. Production is slow and uncertain. On a structural timescale, decades, generations, across the full arc of what a person's choices actually created, it inverts always. Every society built on exploitation has collapsed. Every empire that consumed more than it built has fallen. Every institution that abandoned integrity for short term gain has been dismantled, either from within or from without. Not because God sent a lightning bolt, because the logic of extraction always ends the same way. The man on the yacht, he is not a counterexample to karma. He is a slow motion example of it. You're watching frame 47 of a 1,000 frame film and concluding the hero is losing. But here's what I want to leave you with. The real question is not why do people always get away with it? The real question is, what am I building with the time I have been given? Because here is what is actually true. Every act of genuine goodness, every moment you choose to create instead of extract, to build instead of consume, or give instead of take, that is compounding. Not necessarily in ways you can see right now, not necessarily on your timeline, but somewhere in the structure of what you're building, in the relationships, in the trust, in the capabilities, in the reputation, in the systems you are a part of, it is accumulating. And every act of harm, every shortcut, every deception, every moment you spend someone else's trust, that is also accumulating on both sides of the ledger. The books are always open, and karma, in the truest sense, is not waiting to punish you. It is already you. Every choice you make is simultaneously a result of what you've accumulated and a contribution of what comes next. The man on the yacht did not beat karma. He is karma in motion. And so are you. Stop asking why people are winning. Stop asking why evil people are winning. That question keeps your eyes on the wrong person. Start asking what the structure of your own choices looks like. Are you creating or consuming? Are you building trust or spending it? Are you high energy and ethical, or are you calling passivity virtue? Because karma does not ask what you believe, it asks what you built, and it will answer that question. Not with a lightning bolt, not with a dramatic moment of divine retribution you can point to and feel vindicated by. It will answer it the way the world always answers things, slowly, structurally, inexorably. The compass does not lie, it just takes time to read.